Next up is the attitude of identity. A leader with an identity crisis is not a faithful leader. For years, I sold myself as a DJ. And even then, when a customer needed a videographer or a photo booth or a photo montage, I'd pop up, hey, I can do that too. I mean, it was a service well within my realm of competency, and logically, it was even within the realm of event services. But some didn't see those offerings as consistent with being a DJ. You know, if you're also a videographer, how good a DJ can you be? That kind of thing. Some customers saw that kind of as it's like an offer to be a jack of all trades and an expert of none. As I began transitioning my work to align more with my internal passions as a public speaker, as a teacher and a trainer and a coach, what I truly to be my purpose, the bridge back to DJing became a bridge too far. In order to become who I was meant to be, I had to let go of who I once thought I was. So, am I what I do? Am I who others think I am? Am I who my children think I am, as an example? When we talk about the attitude of identity, we often get mixed up in titles and roles. You know, I love John Maxwell's phrase that leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less, and here's why. We have all worked with someone that the minute they got that label, they had an arrogant attitude that I'm the boss, I'm the manager, I'm the supervisor, you have to do everything that I said. In John Maxwell's book, The 5 Levels of Leadership, he calls that a level 1 leader. And the really sad thing is, whether you're talking about fast food or corporate America or just a mom and pop shop, the person in charge, the person with the manager label, with the title, often assumes the role of tyrant rather than an inspiring, motivating, influencing leader. And a leader with an identity crisis, and by that I mean someone who only is leader by title, they're only leader by name. I heard someone refer to it once, and you see these often. We now call them micro businesses or solopreneurs, where it's a one-man show doing the business. There's nobody else in the business but that person. And if that person was hit by a bus, the business wouldn't exist because that's all there is to the business. And yet they put on their business card CEO or president or manager. And you look at that and you go, president of what? CEO of whom? Manager of whom? And the challenge is that sometimes for corporate paperwork you don't have a choice. But sometimes it's just purely an identity crisis that says I have to have some kind of authority position listed on my business card, on my paperwork, in my email, on my signature block, in order for me to feel important enough to do what I do. Some might even say, and I remember in my youth and arrogance having exactly the same thing. I was hired for a job once when I was 24 or 25 years old. And when the guy told me the tasks that I was supposed to do, I said, no one's going to listen to me, I'm too young. And he said, well, we'll just make you the general manager, then everyone will have to listen to you. And I remember going home and telling my wife, I just got a job, and I walked in the door with no job and walked out with a general manager's job. And I was really pretty high on myself. But I think there are a lot of people that operate with that identity crisis that says, without the job title, man, I'm nothing. Without the job title, I don't know why anybody would listen to me. And it's being a leader is about being able to identify the things that we're responsible for. But I love the way, I believe it was Tony Evans said recently, he said, identity is access and authority. When you see the guy with the keys on his keychain and you think about all the things that he must be able to unlock. I mean, I've got a key to my house, I've got a key to my car, I've got a key to my wife's car, I've got a key to the office, I've got a key to the garage, I've got a key to the fire station. All those sets of keys that I have are all those things that I have access to. But all of those things that I have access to, the things that I own, the things that I possess, are also things that I have authority and responsibility over. And if you have authority, then you also have responsibility. If you have the authority to possess and control something, you also have the responsibility to care for it. So an example, I recently did an event with another entertainer, and in the end, the customer wasn't as satisfied as we had hoped she would be. we do hundreds of events a year between us, over 250 events a year, and very seldom get a negative report. And her report wasn't really negative. It just wasn't. It wasn't up to our par. We didn't look at it and go, "Wow, that was awesome." And because she didn't feel that way, we felt like that was a serious letdown. We've offered to do, events for her at no charge in the future and all kinds of stuff. But when we had the conversation with her about what that event resulted in, she said, if it had been a great event, you would have gotten all the credit for how great the event was. But you also have to take some responsibility for the fact that it wasn't a great event. Obviously there are things beyond our control, but she's absolutely right. Sometimes the customer is right, and sometimes even a wrong customer is right. In this instance, the customer was right. Even though I couldn't control how much fun they had or what they did, ultimately I'm responsible for changing the attitude in the room. As an attitude engineer, that's my job, to make sure that they have a good time in whatever way I need to make sure they have a good time. But we've gone so far as entertaining at events and having the CEO on the stage singing karaoke, because that's what it took to get the rest of the crowd engaged in what was going on in the training environment, to learn what was going on, to captivate the opportunity, all of those things. Whatever it takes, that's what we're responsible for. And identity sometimes doesn't stop with the job title. How many of you have ever heard that phrase, "Well, that's not my job"? Part of that's that sense of entitlement, or that attitude of entitlement. Part of it is the identity that says, it's not in my job description, it's not on my resume, it's not in my application, and my job title certainly doesn't encompass scrubbing toilets. I'm a firefighter. My job is to fight fire. If it's on fire, give me a hose, I'll put it out. That's what I do. What do you mean I have to wash trucks? Now, that sounds bizarre, but I do have encounters with, and have had even recently encounters with, young people who will tell me, I'm here to fight fires, and I'll show up when there's a bell, and I'll leave when the fire is over. And I'm like, well, who's going to wash the trucks? Who's going to refill them with fuel? Who's going to refill them with water? Who's going to take care of the station? And they're like, well, that's not my job. My job is firefighter. And I'm like, okay, apparently you have an identity crisis that says, I don't know what authority I possess, what access to people, places, and opportunities that I have, and therefore I have no fault or credit, i.e. responsibility, because I have no identity. Now, when you look at identity, a lot of people would say, well, I am a father, a brother, a son, an employee, an employer, a volunteer. Some would say, I'm identified by that little title. I remember reading a book years ago, I believe it was Dr. Robert Fulghum, and it was on fire when I lay down on it. There's a hilarious story about an encounter he has with a woman on an airplane. And I'll encourage you to get the book and figure out the rest of it from there. But his summation of this whole story was, I really am irritated by people who, when you ask them, who are you? Rather than telling you about their nature, their character, or anything else, they pull out this little piece of paper that's 2 inches by 3.5 inches, and that defines their life. The job, the title, the position, the company they work for. That's it. That's all there is to them. And so, let me say, when I talk about an attitude of identity, here's some things that I want you to really begin to think deeply about. What does your identity say about the skills that you have? About the talents that you have? About the abilities you have when they're exercised? What does your identity say about, am I who my children think I am? Who my dog thinks I am? Who my neighbors think I am? And if not, what does that say about my identity? If my neighbors think I'm a firefighter and that's it, or a DJ and that's it, and I recently had a person call me that has never done work with me before, but they'd always seen when I was in the DJ industry and that's all I did, they saw the advertising, they saw the work that I did, they'd had conversations with me, and recently called me and said, I've been watching these YouTube videos and didn't even realize that it's the same person that I only knew as a DJ. And I'm really interested in what you do now, and I think you could really help me in my business. Would you coach me? And please forgive me for thinking you were nothing more than a DJ. Well, that was part of my own identity crisis. I clung to being that that guy in so many ways that you really couldn't see me in any other way. I didn't allow it. And I think we all kind of get wrapped up in that in some sense. Some of us, our full identity is in who our parents are and our family name or our business name. Some of us get completely wrapped up in, I married so-and-so from such and such a town, or I drive such and such a car. Some people, their entire identity is possessed in what they have in the driveway or in the garage. And that obviously offers a real challenge because you never get to know the real who behind them. So let me just leave you with that thought. If you were to look at your skill sets, your natural talents, your abilities when they're exercised, who would we find? If we looked in the mirror at you, who are you? Now here's some indicative phrases that you might hear for someone who has, and I won't say figured it out because I think identity is a deep puzzle. You might ask, who am I and whose am I? Am I my mother's son? Am I my wife's husband? Am I my children's father? Am I someone else's child? Am I the job title I have, the skills that I have, the abilities that I have? And here's the scary part. What if all of those went away? Who would I be then? You might hear phrases like, I know what I can do for this group. Or, my skills and ability go beyond my title. Or, I know my limitations and when to delegate authority to someone else. If you're not comfortable delegating authority for some deep, magnanimous fear that you are not going to be able to find yourself again if you hand off the responsibility for that task, you're not going to still be the manager of XYZ if someone else is really doing the bulk of that job. And you know you've encountered people like that. Then you need to ask yourself your question again. What is the source of my identity? Who am I? Whose am I? What makes up the me that I am? Is it my character, my integrity? Is it my skills and my abilities, my talents, my education? Is it my job title? And when you become confident in who you are, you will be able to lead so much better and influence the attitudes of others around you because your attitude of identity is strong.